Hello again, everyone. Deflect here, Firm but Fair Gaming. We're continuing on the series, the 2 or 0 to plus 15 keys, seeing what we can do, and this is going to be the healer version. Now, what's going to come into play again is ease of play. Because you might not have comms, you're only doing 0 to 15s, you might be in a pug situation. How much HPS you can throw out? Is it easy to play? Because some classes are easier than others. Obviously, Holy Priest is easier than Disc Priest to play. Obviously, something like Resto Shaman's much easier than Preservation Evoker. That all takes a factor. So, I'm not going to rank this on if any of these other specs are better. It is going to be for the purpose of 0 to 15 keys, which spec will be great. Because let's face it, 98% are doing 0 to 15s. Holy Priest. Holy Priest in the 0 to 15 key is S tier. It's got a heal for everything. It's pretty straightforward. It does some great damage now, which was weird because at the end of Dragonflight, it was actually doing more damage than Disc Priest, and Disc Priest needs to do damage to heal, which was pretty funny that happened. But it is doing great right now. It is a pretty easy spec to play. Like, you always have a button that you can do healing with. You play with some procs. You only have a couple damage buttons. The rotation is not crazy for damage either. It's a pretty easy spec to get into. Now, to master, all these take a lot of time to master, but to start playing and play through those keys, Holy Priest is definitely going to be S tier. Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin got some huge buffs this in the War Within. I'm going to put it as a solid A tier. It probably could go S tier as well. There's a couple nuances, and they took out a bunch of abilities and changed them, so it got a nice little rework. It's a fun spec to play. It's a melee healer, so it always sets it down a little bit because while you're in melee, you always have to worry about everything else down there. So it is a little, just on that aspect, it's a tiny bit harder than some of the range ones. It's always easier to play range while you're healing than melee because you don't have to worry about anything that's going on or frontals or anything like that. It's not still, I'm not going to say that it's overly difficult. It's not the hardest healer to play by any means, but it takes a little nuance to get into. Throwing out some great HPS right now and doing very well. Mistweaver Monk. Now, again, if you see my other videos, I'll be playing Mistweaver this season. I'll be playing Monk this season. Brewmaster, Windwalker, Mistweaver. For the new X pack as well. As it's just it's probably my favorite class in the game by far. I really enjoy all of it, even though it isn't always great, and Blizzard has overlooked it for almost an entire X pack, as Brewmaster was pretty much the worst tank for an entire Dragonflight. Now, it's hard to say where to rank it. It has some great, decent output in Mythic Plus. It can do a bunch of things. It's got some good utility. Has more utility than Priest does. I just don't know. I like the fist weaving, and fist weaving's a ton of fun, and I might be biased if I put it in A. Maybe it deserves B. I don't. It still has some decent throughput, though. You can get Shayloons down. There's a talent to take where you can bring it way down and have a full Shayloons every 40 seconds, which is nuts. So every pack you could have a full 10 stack Shayloons. I just don't know because you have to give up quite a bit to get it. We're gonna say very high B, very very high B. Preservation Evoker. So this is gonna come with a bit of a nuance here because Preservation Evoker right now is throwing out just about as high numbers as you can on the healing and damage. The problem with Preservation Evoker, it requires a bunch of steps to set that up. Now, if I was strictly going to go on just the meters, it would be S tier. But because you're going to run into problems in the 0 to 15 keys of people not being in range, so you have to echo them. You hook your stasis, and then you have to pre-plan for the damage, and then someone might take damage in between, and it's not going to work. And if with all the things, the 30 yards, and if you have a whole bunch of range playing with you, and they're all spread out, that it might. I'm gonna have to drop it a tier because of that. I think it has potential to do maximum HPS, but you need to be pretty coordinated and stick together. A lot of its healing is directional, and a lot of its healing takes time to cast. So it does make it harder to play this spec than a lot of the other specs. It was on the more difficult side to master it by for sure. It but again, if you do, you do great damage and great healing. It's not like you have a ton of buttons to hit, but you have to hit them correctly and you have to aim them as well, which also is a pain in the ass. Whereas, a lot of the specs, you don't have a frontal cone that you have to project and hit everyone with. You don't have to hit everyone with temporal anomaly shooting forward. Those are not things that other specs have to worry about. It is a fun spec, and you bring some great utility, and that is what's keeping it top of A tier as well. But due to the other two specs, well, spoiler, that are going to be in S tier, it takes a lot more to get there. So let's just put that there. We'll just sit with Resto Shaman at the top here. Resto Shaman is cranking, doing crazy HPS, doing pretty good DPS. Resto Shaman is on the easier side to play, and it has the most utility out of any one healer in the game. It not only is one of two healers that bring Bloodlust, it has a totem for everything you can imagine. It now has a raid buff, which makes it even better. And they've done some things with Healing Rain that make that even easier to use. So Shaman, yes, does have some cast times on things for sure, but Shaman is on the easier end to play. And Shaman is pretty straightforward with damage as well. So it is definitely up there. The utility alone is just nuts for Shaman. So it is a S tier spec. You can't go wrong with Shaman right now. Resto Druid. This is where I've seen a lot of people sleep on Resto Druid. Resto Druid and Raid is absolutely cranking on some of the testing. And it is just crushing some heals. Resto Druid does require some prep work because it is hot. So you do have to have them out. You do need to know when the damage is coming. You do have to be prepared. So it does take some preparation. A lot like Preservation Evoker. It's not like a reactive healer like Holy Priest. A lot like proactive like Disc Priest, where you got to be prepared for the damage coming. And Resto Druid is, it takes a lot to master, I would say, because you do have to cat weave. You do have to do other things to do damage if you want to really max it. But it is still a solid pick, and I would say it is definitely a tier spec right now going into the War Within. Last one is Disc Priest. Disc Priest it's good. It's not a terrible pick, so don't take this the wrong way if I put it right in C. It's not that bad of a pick. It will still work, and it will still do the job, and it will still be okay. But Disc Priest, could be better. It could be better. It requires a lot of setup. It requires a lot of finesse. You have to know when damage is coming out. You do have to play around some of your cooldowns. It could almost go low B too. It could just look like this. It would be low, but I don't know if there's enough separation between Mistweaver and Disc Priest, because Mistweaver brings a lot more utility than Disc Priest as well. So kind of having a separation there is good. I'm just gonna keep it like this, just because it will look, it will spread it out just a little bit, because there is a bit of a gap between Mistweaver and Disc Priest. Like Mistweaver could be very low A tier too, and that would make Disc Priest B tier if you want to look at it that way. But for spacing purposes, I think these specs are just a step ahead of Mistweaver, and I think Mistweaver's a step ahead of Disc Priest. So that's the way I'm calling it for the War Within beginning. Unless there's some other tuning coming in, this is how I'm going to keep it for now. I'll update as always as it continues on. But 0 to 15 keys, I think these are going to be your players in this order. If you have any questions, as always, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Deflect, Firm and Fair Gaming. We'll see you in the next video.